Psychedelics Today. Joe and Kyle here. Today on the show we have David Stetson of the Oka Retreat Center in the Yucatan of Mexico. Great guy, really fun conversation. Happy he joined us, and I think we get into some really interesting stuff. Ecological harms of Iboga, risks of Iboga, which are pretty minimal. And I don't know, anything else, Kyle, that kind of stood out in this that we want to preface with?
Yeah, microdosing Iboga, which I thought was really interesting. Some of the traditional uses, and then also maybe the difference between kind of these grassroots Ibogaine centers versus the more medicalized. So yeah, you'll hear some of the differences.
Yeah, doing Iboga in a hospital bed versus in a more traditional setting where you're in a group and singing, and there's some real differences for sure. And it's I think it's situational. What is best for you, the patient, it really depends on your situation. Maybe you need the super clinical scenario because you're going to die in 3 days if you don't do it, or maybe you're not on death's door and you can go to a less clinical place. And the interview cuts off at the end. Being in Mexico, the internet isn't perfect, but I was really impressed that we got to stay on for so long with David, and we'll definitely have him on the show again because his work is very interesting. They also offer ayahuasca. I think Kyle and I plan on talking to him about doing breath work down there, maybe, because who doesn't want to go to Mexico, get warm in the middle of winter, and do some breath work. So I think that's really it for prefacing the show. So we wanted to announce a few things. Right now we're actually doing a book giveaway. So you can find that on our website or on Facebook. It's pinned to the top, probably also our Twitter. And we're giving away 9 books, a bunch of books by Stan Groff, LSD, My Problem Child by Albert Hoffman, the discoverer / inventor of LSD, and PCAL by Alexander and Anne Shulgin, and the Psychedelic Explorer's Guide by Jim Fadiman, and also a DVD biography of Alexander Shulgin called Dirty Pictures, which is amazing. It's hard not to love the man after watching that movie. You just have so much respect for him. It's amazing. Either way, check it out. It's killer. And the cream or the frosting on the cake here is that we're giving away a seat of our psychedelic self-care and integration course that we're going to run. I think it was July, right?
Yeah,
July. So that's going to be pretty cool too. So total value of this thing's probably over $300. All we're asking you to do is put in your email to sign up for the contest, and I hope you win. So other stuff going on. We just ran a webinar, kind of a quick webinar last night for psychedelic self-care and integration to give people kind of a primer on it. Expect more of those. We'll announce them on our social media channels. If you want to jump on one, feel free to reach out. Email again is psychedelicstodayemail@gmail.com. And now on to the breathwork announcements. I've got a bunch of workshops coming up here in Breckenridge, Colorado. May 21, June 4, July 8, and August 6. Those are full-day workshops. Dream Shadow, Transpersonal Breathwork. Very similar, if not identical, to holotropic breathwork. And there's a really cool workshop I'm doing out in Lyons, Colorado, a little north of Boulder, maybe 30 minutes north of Boulder. And we have a lady that's marketing under the name of Ganjasana, Rachel. She's doing kind of a marijuana yoga workshop. I think that'll be Friday night. And I think this is June 23rd weekend. But, info on my website and probably on the Psychedelics Today site too. So we're doing my full transpersonal breathwork workshop, followed by somebody that does more of a rebirthing breathwork workshop, Lindsay. And I think there's some sound healing stuff too. So definitely a little more new agey. If you're not comfortable with new agey, this might not be the workshop for you. Come to one of my normal workshops. But it's going to be beautiful. It's like in this little canyon at a farmhouse, camping on a river. or there's beds inside the house too. So this is like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I think 4 p.m. to 4 p.m., something like that. I think that's it for physical workshop announcements. Oh yeah, Kyle will be in Vermont for some workshops at Dream Shadow, but I think they're sold out. But you could get on the wait list.
They are sold out, but yeah, get on the wait list. People drop off last minute. People get sick.
Yeah, it'll be really fun if you get to meet Kyle and our teachers up there in Vermont. Great folks. Let's see. Anything else, Kyle? I think that might be it.
Yeah, I just have that one kind of maybe shamanic type transpersonal breath work up in Massachusetts on June 10th. And that's with the Boston Entheogenic Network. We're trying to do a little fundraising for that project. And that's it for me right now. I should start trying to plan some stuff now that the semester is wrapped up and I have some more free time and taking the summer off for school. So, yeah.
Fantastic. And we have an events page on Psychedelics Today, and you can keep up with our stuff there. Odds are good I'll be at the Horizons Conference in October in New York. So if you're going to be there, hit us up. It would be cool to meet up. And that's it for now. Enjoy the show with David. And sorry about it cutting off at the end. I won't. Well, actually, I will. I'll leave you with some parting thoughts on the end. Anyway, talk soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Psychedelics Today with Kyle and Joe. Today on the show we have David Stetson from the Oka Retreat Center in Yucatan, Mexico, northern side of Yucatan. David, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, no problem. Really been hoping to get you on the show for a while now. You and I spoke maybe a couple months ago, and I was really fascinated because you have a smaller situation going over there in Oka relative to like the huge super medical looking setting that you can see over at Crossroads on the other side of Mexico. And I kind of like the flavor or style you guys have going right now compared to that bigger situation. Could you describe your place?
Well, thanks for that. Yeah, we try to keep it smaller, just with 2 people at a time or so. But, we come from a background that's very much, I came into Ibogaine through my experiences in Africa. I went over to Africa to experience the culture there, and of course Iboga and Bwiti and the whole beautiful culture that's over there. And also my other co-director here, Bobby, has been over there multiple times as well. And I think it's pretty safe to say that, we really respect the origins of Iboga, the birthplace of Iboga in Gabon, and the way that they do it over there and how they think about it. Of course, there's the safety issues with Ibogaine, which the clinical protocols for are totally necessary, and we follow those because we were concerned with the safety. But the way it's used traditionally and how long it's been used traditionally, for centuries or longer, some people say, is something we just can't ignore. So when we bring people in, we have them do a few pre-rituals before we actually start giving them Ibogaine, and then the ceremony itself is very much an homage to what we learned over there. We incorporate their music and just a lot of their ideology. Mm. So it's kind of maybe foreign for some people what we might be doing around them, but for the most part, people are very receptive to it. Part of the reason why they're coming to us anyway is because they already know that's going to happen, of course. Mm. They don't necessarily want to go to another place or a different place that's maybe too overbearing or clinical. So there's us, which we have a very receptive idea in terms of drug users. The fact that these people are coming here probably after multiple times of other traditional rehabs not working out, and being stigmatized and judged by everyone around them, including, of course, the maybe some of the facilities they've gone to before. I think them coming here is a really, it's very, really refreshing because, you know, we understand their drug use. We've been through that too. And we try to guide them along and make suggestions and everything, but nothing too forced or rigid.
Right. That's awesome. When you went to Africa, did you go over there for the intention to learn about Ibogaine, or did something else draw you over there first?
I read about Iboga in a book by Daniel Pinchbeck called 2012 first, which really sparked my interest because I thought that I hadn't heard about it before. So, and I learned about that right around the time of ayahuasca too. But,
okay.
You know, I started digging up information on other people's experiences, and they were pretty minimal at the time. I mean, this was around 2005 or so. So I had to dig a little bit more to find more about it. I don't really remember coming across much, or maybe not being concerned too much about it as an addiction interrupter. Mm-hmm. I was just kind of, you know, I've been living in cities for the past few years, really disenchanted with the whole atmosphere that the city has, and how much pressure there is there, and how much of a race it is, and how I started feeling really exhausted by the whole thing, and my career wasn't really going anywhere, stuff like this. So when I actually had the chance and had the money to go there and not only experience Iboga, but also get in touch with this other way of life, an indigenous way of life there. I think it was really cut out. It was really made for me. You know, I still think of it as one of the best things I've ever done, going to Gabon.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I was just reading on your site that you were initiated into the Bwiti tradition in 2007. That's
right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, for those who don't know, that's the traditional culture that used, the most famous culture that used Iboga for a long period of time. And there is absolutely some value in maintaining that tradition. Actually, David, do you know offhand if larger facilities are using kind of that Bwiti framework for their kind of treatment?
The main one I've heard of is Iboga Wellness down in Costa Rica. Mm-hmm. And from what I've heard about them, they do a really great job too. I think they were taught by different people in Gabon, but they really maintain the culture. And I think they actually bring groups of people over to Gabon somewhat periodically. And they really, it seems like to me, just based on their website and some of the little things I've heard from other people, is that they have their own protocol. You know, they have their own set of rituals and stuff like that, kind of like we do. I think it's slightly different, but I think people really like them too.
And what value do you personally see? I know it's probably hard to describe, but what value do you see in including that Bwiti framework or model in the therapeutic context?
Well, I think that's really broad. I think that it does a lot of different things for different people. I mean, in our culture in the West now, I think a lot of things have it's very much based on the individual. So I think in a large sense, the sense of community that is still alive over in Gabon. I mean, Bwiti is a very communal phenomenon. Everyone coming together in the temple and basically celebrating life, song and dance, eating Iboga, and paying their respects to each other and to nature. A lot of it's Christian based these days, so they're singing a lot about Jesus. But I haven't really been exposed to much of that. Mm-hmm. But just that aspect of it, the community aspect, this idea of a support system. We're all in this together. We're helping each other, although it can be hard at some times. Is a really therapeutic element to me, and I think to people coming here too, because we try to do that here. I mean, the staff that we have here, I mean, we're all living here together too on site. And I think when it goes the best here for the people coming, they really feel a part of this community, at least for a little while. And also, so there's the communal aspect, and then the, kind of the appreciation of nature and where Iboga comes from, which is obviously it's a plant, and getting back to our roots in a way, I guess you would say, like in a way that you're part of nature. That's kind of, I feel like, really simple, but that's I'm assuming that's lost in a lot of people, not obviously on purpose. It's just developed as a symptom of our like highly advanced culture in the West.
Right.
So would you say it feels more like you're joining some sort of continuum of an unbroken thing?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just these meditative rituals we have people doing during the day of their treatment, it really gives them a chance to reflect on themselves mostly, because Iboga is really all about you, about seeing yourself. So getting them prepared is a really important part of it, and getting them in the mindset for that. So a lot of the undertones or overtones of those pre-meditative rituals are, asking for guidance and permission from nature, from our ancestors, from the spirits, basically. So I don't know how much that's going on at other clinics, but we really believe in that here.
Yeah, that's great to kind of keep that tradition alive too. I actually, now that I'm talking to you, I think I remember a friend of mine coming down there, and they were talking about how they really appreciated the integration of the Bwiti tradition into their session and stuff. So yeah, it's really awesome cool that you're doing that. Do you guys have a medical team that you work with too?
We have a nurse that comes in for the treatments that is just there taking vital signs throughout, and we have we have like oxygen tank and defibrillator and certain medications if there's any intervention needs, but we really rarely had to intervene. I think maybe once in the last few years, because most of the people that pass the EKG, which is actually reviewed by a doctor here in Merida, it's really safe for people who are passing the EKG. I mean, and sometimes we ask for blood labs if they're like have Hep C or something like that, or if they're heavy drinkers. But yeah, I mean, as long as they're screened properly like that, it's usually a pretty unproblematic process. Yeah.
What are some of the risks of Ibogaine?
Well, there's the cardiac risk mainly, which is why the EKG. So,
right.
I'm not the expert on the particulars of EKG reading, just because we have some professional doing that. I just know of something called a QT interval, which is if that's too long, you'd probably get denied.
Okay.
If you have something called an arrhythmia, which is a pre-existing heart condition, then we'd probably deny you. But we've only had to deny a very small percentage of people. It's a small percentage of people that are unfit to do this, and oftentimes they're older, or they have like they're on like psych meds. They're on psych meds, or they have schizophrenia, or they're on SSRIs or something like that. Like that's another danger is SSRI medications. If they're on that, Ibogaine could theoretically induce a serotonin syndrome in them, which is really dangerous.
How do you talk to people about their psychiatric medication when they want to come, but you have some ideas about it being dangerous for them based on what they're taking. Like, do you tell them to maybe talk to a psychiatrist?
Yeah, like if they really want to do it, we tell them to get their doctor's supervision to come down off of their meds. Like we just had a guy here that spent the last few months getting off of a few antidepressants and benzos too. Mm-hmm. And so he put in a lot of work. Yeah, he said it was tough, but he also said that these medications were no longer doing anything for his state of mind. So he was really motivated to move on from them and to do this. And the results were really, really great. I mean, he was really committed too, which goes a long way with Iboga or Ayahuasca or anything. You know, you have to be kind of in the right state of mind and willing to depart with certain things.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, that's tough. I can only imagine that conversation, like somebody just really wants to go, but they really just don't feel strong enough to let go of their medication.
Yeah, that happens. I mean, we have them fill out a form mm-hmm. where they're supposed to outline all the medications they've been on for the past 6 weeks.
Right.
So if something is amiss in that, we just tell them that they need to get their prescribing doctor's permission to come off of them, because especially with SSRI, it can be really dangerous just all of a sudden halting that.
Right.
People can go into really severe depression, and it can kind of be life-threatening in some cases.
Yeah, so you're doing some prep work with some folks that are on medication, maybe like up to a month beforehand coming down?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes longer, because if they're on a more than one of them,
right.
We try to we play it as safe as possible. So if we know about the half-life of them, we try to leave a larger gap after they completely halt use to make sure it's completely out of your system.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really important. When I worked in a residential facility, we had some people come in and completely just stop taking their medication, and I've definitely seen some pretty downward spiral things happen when people do that. It's kind of scary.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't really mess around with that.
No. Yeah, so it's great to hear that you're helping prep and help with the tapering off with, the help of their psychiatrist or doctor.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise it's just not worth it. The treatment could end up being way worse for them. So it's just not even close to being worth it for anybody.
Do you ever, so other drugs, a lot of people, have what they call like a bad trip or difficult experience or something like that, a freak out, bummer, all those kind of words.
Right.
I have, my own view on what that is and how to really handle that. But how do you model that kind of thing? 'Cause I'm sure people can sometimes have a bad time with Iboga.
Well, if they're not, it probably didn't work.
That's how you know it's working.
I mean, Iboga is really hard. It's for the most part, I think there's always at least a part of it that's hard. For most people, the entire day afterward is usually very hard. Confrontational is maybe the best word to use. My interpretation is that that it's kind of the gift of Iboga that it's able to bring up to the surface all of yourself, including, of course, your deepest fears and negativities, and a lot of self-loathing comes out. But there's also a closure to that too. You don't stay stuck in that. That's just the introspective phase people call gray day. That's one of the most important parts of the process. I mean, it's more common than it is not. That's just part of Iboga. And for a lot of people that are maybe into ayahuasca, maybe they've heard of this part of Iboga, and it's kind of scary because it's not easy. I mean, you're really sorting through some of the ugliest parts of yourself that are usually not really even accessible. I mean, you're not even really allowed to look at that.
Right.
During waking life, it's just not. It's something you're trying to cover up all the time, and mask and all that. So it's really important work. It's hard work, but it's really the gift of Iboga to me.
The way I model it is kind of like the plant being a kind of strong masculine grandfather teacher, giving you a really hard time about all the stuff that you personally know wasn't the right move in your life. I don't know if that's kind of a misconception, but that's kind of the way I've been modeling it.
That's pretty right on. I mean, I've heard of people refer to Iboga as grandmother too, but especially for folks who have done ayahuasca, the grandfather and mother comparison is usually used, which I can totally relate to, because being that I've done both, ayahuasca can be really hard too at points, but for one thing, it lasts a lot less long, and even when it is difficult with the ayahuasca, it still seems, and with Iboga too, I guess, there's something in the background that's still very nurturing and feels like you're being cared for. Maybe more so in the moment with ayahuasca or something like that. But when you finally pop out of the Iboga, you or at least I was, and a lot of people I've seen go through it are very grateful that they were able to see some of the more terrifying things about themselves or the world or whatever.
Interesting. So you guys recently kind of expanded your offerings a little bit. So you're working with a traditional ayahuasca shaman who lives in the Yucatan. He has to drive over a little bit. Do you guys do it on site, or do you go out to his place?
We do it on site, and he actually doesn't want to be as known. I think he wants to remain a little bit more low key. So I won't mention his name or anything.
Sure.
Certain things he's concerned with, but this is something great for us, because it's always seemed like such a great follow-up to Ibogaine. I mean, provided that you leave enough time for recovery after Ibogaine, because it can take a few days, especially with people coming here on any kind of opiate or mainly opiates, because it can take a little bit longer for them to pop out of the Ibogaine experience. But once they do, and they're back up, and they're back functioning fully and everything, they've eaten, they've slept. Ayahuasca can really provide them with a really nice closure to their whole time here. It can give them more insight. And I think it really does kind of go back to what we were just talking about how, Iboga's the more stern, and ayahuasca might be more of a feeling like you're being cradled. I've heard from a lot of people, which I think is true. Them going through that kind of a thing is really great afterward for them. But we bring in someone else, because we only have the experience with the Iboga. Bobby and I only have the experience with the Iboga, and we've been doing all of our work with that. So we bring in this other guy to do the ayahuasca, and he brings the brew, and he sings the Icaros and everything like that.
And what people might not know, just really quick add, the thing a lot of people might not understand is that Mexico has really interesting laws around traditional medicines. So, especially plant-based medicines. So ayahuasca, for instance, is legal, protected under this traditional medicine ruling, and same thing with Ibogaine. Really fascinating. And yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. Sorry to interrupt your story.
No, it's really nice for us to work here with it because of that. And they have a long history of traditional medicine here. So I think in general, it's really a welcoming place to do the work.
How many sessions do people usually go through when they come down? Is it just one Iboga session, and then maybe if they want to do ayahuasca, or do you have different plans or treatment options for folks?
Yeah, right now it's usually Ibogaine first within the first few days. And then afterward, they do 2 ayahuasca ceremonies. Sometimes they just want to do one, but they're encouraged to do 2. And this other guy now that's bringing the ayahuasca here, he has sapo frog medicine, which is, I think, referred to as Cambo a lot, although he's kind of set on calling it sapo. But sapo is sometimes confused with 5-MeO-DMT, which is not what it is. It's the one where you get it burned into your skin, and right. It's kind of like this, you get really sick for a little while, for the whole thing lasts maybe like 20 minutes, and you get very lightheaded. Sometimes you pass out, you throw up a lot of bile. It sounds awful, but afterward, people generally feel really good and light. And, I've heard some more of like the extreme stories behind Cambo. One of them being that, there was this guy that was on opiates for a major leg injury. And he, I think, came off of the opiates with Ibogaine. But so then he was left with this pain that he didn't really know what to do with, which is kind of common a lot with people that are coming down for pharmaceutical opiates, that they're on pharmaceutical opiates, but the original accident or injury that they had is something they're going to have to really work out and deal with in a different way after they get off the opiates with Ibogaine. So this guy decided to do Cambo, and claims that his pain just went away. His chronic pain went away after sapo.
Wow. It's a really interesting medicine. I almost had the chance to work with it once, and I don't know, it sounds really interesting. The way that it was described to me was kind of like fire medicine, in the sense that it just like heats up your insides and kind of flushes out toxins and different things like that. But I hear you feel amazing afterwards for like a week or 2. Like you have like a really strong amount of energy and
yeah, it's pretty crazy medicine. It's just like, it's so weird. It's so weird. Because I felt it immediately after you put on the first dot, and you're supposed to have like 2 or 3. And what happened to me is I totally passed out, and apparently I threw up, and I don't remember throwing up at all. and then came to, slowly came to in the next like 10 minutes or so. And felt a little groggy the rest of the day. I think it takes a little bit more time for some people, but in general, within the same day, you're starting to feel good. And the next day, it's like, wow.
And there's a lot of it in Boulder, Colorado right now. A lot of people are talking about it.
Oh yeah,
and it's kind of interesting to have people go to the jungle and bring it back up here to the desert. Yeah, it's fascinating. People seem to love it though. Speak very highly of it.
Yeah, I know one guy who uses it at an Ibogaine Aftercare place over in near Vegas called the Holistic House, which I've heard they're doing great things over there. But I remember them posting something a little while ago on using Cambo and how phenomenal it is for people coming right off of an Ibogaine detox.
Can you tell us briefly about that? What is this place, Holistic House?
The Holistic House in Vegas is run by someone named Justin Hoffman, who I'm pretty sure was opiate dependent a while ago and came off of it with Ibogaine, and then decided to do specifically an Ibogaine Aftercare center. That's I'm not completely sure about the specific things they have there. I know that they have Reiki and yoga, and it's nutrition based. They also have one of those float tanks, I think.
Oh, cool.
That's very helpful.
And I think they have, they have Cambo sometimes, or maybe all the time. And I think they also work with ketamine injections too. But all I've heard is positive things, and it's somewhat of a small operation, which is nice too. I think he takes maybe 5 people at a time.
Wow.
But he's really into the work very vocal about it. It's gotten some immediate attention. So we try to have people go there after they come here, but it's like I was saying before, they've a lot of people are really turned off by any inpatient style kind of a facility. And so it's kind of hard to push it on them, but we always mention it to people.
Right, because that's a lot of the missing link in this psychedelic world is the lack of aftercare and people being able to step outside of their world for a little while to perhaps solidify new habits. Because if you just go right back into your own group of friends, what real promise do you have that you're going to stay sober?
Oh, it's almost, it's really hard.
Right.
I mean, it's really hard. Even if it's much easier to tell after you've been dependent on substances for a while, and if you end up going like relapsing, for example. But even people coming here for spiritual reasons, depression reasons, stuff like that, it's kind of the same thing. Like how the hell do you integrate these epic experiences that you have, and then go back into a culture that really doesn't care about that at all? It's really hard, and people get really empowered when they're here, but I worry about them when they go home because that can be shut down really fast because no one else knows what you're talking about, for one thing.
Right.
Even less of them care. It's kind of like when you tell a story about your dreams, or you're hearing a story about someone else's dream. It's like, sure. But there's no the visualizations they're describing about their dreams or about their experiences here. It's obviously without the sensations, the emotions behind those visions, and which are totally private ordeals. And going back to their same exact environment, I think very quickly this can just turn into a fading experience. It's really hard to have it stick with you in the way that most people want. So it can be, that can be another lesson in and of itself, I think. I mean, I remember feeling heartbroken after a while after I got back from Africa, because just no one gets it, and they shouldn't. They shouldn't have to get it.
Right.
And I think that a lot of people thought I was totally nuts, because I came back thinking that this is for everybody. Everybody can get so much out of this, and this is going to really help the situation with everybody and across the universe, like the whole thing. So, but at the end of the day, people are just walking around and they're totally in their own thing, and it doesn't really touch much there. So you have to kind of be selfish in a way and kind of arrive at that understanding somehow that it's not really your responsibility to really look after anybody else but yourself, at least in this kind of a depth. I mean, you can change your environment and all that, like especially as a former drug abuser, like changing your environment is really huge. Not erasing all of the toxic contacts in your phone, moving to another part of a city or moving to a different city, and maybe going to an aftercare place, or at least forcing those things on yourself where you're starting to learn new habits. I mean, you have to fill in the gap that the drugs used to fill in, and that takes a lot of strength to be able to do that. I mean, Ibogaine and Ayahuasca can really set you off on a first step to do that. You can really have strong epiphanies about how you've been doing life wrong up to this point. But where to go from there is really the main bulk of the work, because you still have to live in this world. Even if there's such a thing as enlightenment, and you get that or whatever, it's still the same kind of a thing. You still have to function in these rules and in the way everything is set up, and you have to kind of just have a centeredness about you that isn't going to be fucked with,
right? So
that you can, so that you can continue to evolve on the path that you started with these.
Yeah, that's really great points, and I think it's really important to highlight, like that integration component of it, because I think now as like some of these psychedelics are starting to hit mainstream, I know there was just a Nat Geo documentary on Iboga, was it like a few nights ago? I didn't get to see it, but I know some people think that these substances might be like a magic bullet or like a cure-all, like, oh, I'm going to go down there and maybe cure my addiction. And, that's not always the case, is it? Like, some of it has to do with the follow-up, and then how do you work with it afterwards?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can tell sometimes here when people come that, they're just not ready yet. And they did probably think that this, even as much as I try to tell them before they get here, this is not basically a magic bullet, and this isn't necessarily going to change your mind about your drug use. If you've already changed your mind, but you still feel kind of powerless to stop, which is very often the case with opiates, because it is kind of a scary situation to go into withdrawal for a lot of people. So just the fact that Ibogaine alleviates withdrawal is really good for people, and that's a lot of what brings them down here. But as far as long-term sobriety, and if they really want that, this can really start them on that. But if they're just kind of wanting to try a new thing, and they've heard that this will cure addiction, and they're getting a lot of pressure from people around them to stop using, but they actually really don't. We can usually notice that while they're here, and it's really hard to suggest many things for them, other than kind of looking at their situation with some kind of foresight to know that if they go back to using, they're just going to end up with the same thing, the same life of a lot of pain and for other people and for themselves, and the sort of that you're stuck to heroin or opiates or whatever like that. It's that's not necessarily something that people want. It's just become habit for a lot of people, I think. My new spiel with a lot of people is kind of like, well, it's the gist of it is, well, if you're using opiates now, you're kind of doing what the system wants you to. Like this whole thing about the heroin epidemic and the pharmaceutical companies sort of pushing their brand of opiates on people and overprescribing them, and all this business about kickbacks and the big pharma industry and how evil it is and all that stuff. Like, if you actually really believe that stuff, what most people do that are coming down here, you're actually doing exactly what they want by going back to doing that, and you're, so it's, I don't know how much that actually works, but you try to do anything,
Is there new data coming out right now about the super complex chemistry of Iboga and how it helps with those symptoms, withdrawal symptoms?
I'm not sure about really new research. I know that there's something going on. I think there's studies going on right now, but I know that they've done tests on rats, and they've seen some success with that. And also some of the smaller clinical trials with opiate-dependent people are really promising too. But for most part, I think the actual hard data that's been done is kind of thin, at least in terms of academia or any other addiction research that's been done on other traditional substances that are used for it. I think most of what's there is our testimonials from people, from both providers and people who have done Ibogaine to get off of opiates. To me, those are the more it's the more important part of it, because the way that Ibogaine has slowly taken off is probably proportionate to how many people it's helped and have talked about it. Because the amount of research that's been done on it just isn't obviously enough for it to become as big as it should be.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The first time I read about it or saw it in mainstream culture was actually some like HBO show. What the hell is it called?
On Vice?
No, it was Homeland. It was actually like fiction. So this one of the main characters of the show became an addict, and I think the CIA used Iboga on him because he was important for a project they had going, because they really needed him clean. It was fascinating to see it in the mainstream, because I had been reading about it for years, very interested, and go, oh, look, finally. But yeah, you're right. Vice covers it quite well. Dimitri. Actually, yeah, Dimitri was on Vice via HBO. Did you meet Dimitri ever?
I actually met Dimitri when I went to Africa first. He just happened to be there.
Oh, great.
Oh, cool.
And he was a really big part of my initiation. He was part of it. And I talked with him a lot there. And then actually afterward, I worked with him a few times in New York, because every time I would fly back from California to New York for the holidays, I would try to see if he was doing any work there. And I did a few sessions with him in New York like years ago. But yeah, he was on your guys' show too. I really liked the episode with him on it. He's an unbelievable speaker.
His energy is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something else. I'm glad you got to do some work with him and just kind of accidentally met him in Africa. That's cool.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about the kind of ecological situation with Iboga? I know it's kind of being overharvested right now in Africa. And I think when we talked last, you were talking about perhaps cultivating some in Mexico.
That would be great, but unfortunately this location is totally unfit.
Right.
It would take way too much maintenance. You'd have to have it in a greenhouse and have it be maintained very regularly. So that's kind of out for me for the moment, but I think I will end up doing that. But as far as the ecological situation with Iboga and its homeland, I think it's become a concern, to say the least. There's a lot of people, or there's a few people I know of in Gabon that are trying to start cultivation projects. But the lack of funding is obviously an issue over there. And from what I've heard, there's a lot of poaching going on now, especially due to how many centers there are. So, for one thing, the Chinese have basically bought out a large part of the forest in Gabon. And it's been, the government has sold them large plots of the jungle to clear cut. And so they're cutting down lots of trees for lumber over there and sending it back to China. But a lot of the people doing work are Gabonese people, and they know what Iboga looks like. And I've heard that they just uproot whole trees and sell them all for quick money. And if you're to harvest Iboga properly, you're harvesting the roots of the plant. So you can only harvest a small portion of that root system, or else you're going to kill the plant.
Right.
So anybody in Bwiti and Gabon, in true Bwiti, they're harvesting it like it should be, so that the plant can keep growing. So that's going on. I think there's a lot of over harvesting going on in Cameroon. I think there's a lot of Iboga products coming out of Cameroon. which is less known for Bwiti, but it's still there. It's right next door to Gabon. And, but right now it's promising because there's this other tree called Voakonga, which can grow in a lot, it can grow in more climate zones. So I know someone named Chris Jenks who started a Voakonga farm, I think down in South Africa. And then our supplier of Ibogaine, it's all Voakonga derived. So it's not touching the Iboga in Gabon, because in some of the more extreme stories, people in Gabon, they can't find Iboga anymore, and they're all just drinking now. That's not really I don't know how completely true that is, but because there's still Iboga in Gabon, but it's just becoming a concern because it's starting to disappear, and people are noticing that it's possibly going to become endangered soon.
How would we find this stuff? You're calling it Voakonga?
Voakonga.
Voakonga. Okay.
Voakonga africana, which actually it requires a semi-synthesis to get Ibogaine. I think it just has an Ibogaine precursor in it, or something like that. So you need kind of a lab setup in order to derive Ibogaine from it.
And that's what you guys use down there?
We use that. We use that for our detoxes because it's really pure and it's sustainable. Because it comes from Voakonga.
Right. And so is it a synthesis after they extract it?
I'm not exactly sure the process. I just know it's a semi-synthesis. So there is an extraction first, and then I think they synthesize something out of it. I'm not really that sure, but I don't think it's that complex. So you just have to be aware of your source of Iboga, which is hard now. I mean, we get emails all the time from people that have no references, and they're trying to sell us Iboga root bark, and we never buy from them because unless I try to get references from the people I know in Gabon, but I've never had anyone confirm that they're doing it ethically. So it's hopefully it won't become a really sad situation, because if Iboga becomes endangered in Gabon, its birthplace, I mean that's something that we really don't want to be a part of. And I hope it doesn't get to that.
Yeah, it would be a shame if I guess that's the one thing about plant medicines, is that they're being consumed a lot, and they are a kind of limited resource in some sense. Do you have any thoughts about the tourism that's really picked up with Iboga or Ayahuasca?
Well, I know for sure the Ayahuasca is a huge boom right now, and the people, there's a ton of people going down there. For Africa, I don't have any numbers, and I don't have any numbers that I've heard about or in front of me or anything, but way less people going to Africa to experience Bwiti. I think it's a lot scarier to go to Africa for Americans. I think they get a really slow trickle of Europeans and sometimes Americans. People are going there, but it's not in hordes like to Peru to do ayahuasca. But this is starting to get into the subject of the traditional use of these medicines and how the role that Westerners are playing now as major consumers. And as Dimitri talks about the commodification of these plant medicines and how and some of the dangers that come along with that. I mean, this is a really broad topic that you can talk all day about, because obviously we believe that that people are benefiting from them and that they should have access to them. But as far as the the use of these things in the framework of the Western medical model seems a little off. I mean, I understand why it's being attempted, because of the amazing experiences people are getting from them, the healing that people are getting from them is really needed right now. I think a lot of people are having a lot of problems with drug abuse or just, stress or depression or anything like that. And so to get them legitimized, the attempt to put them in the Western medical model is as I guess kind of appropriate. It makes sense why people want to do that. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if they're going to end up there. I mean, I guess we'll find out. I'm kind of the belief that what is happening right now is supposed to happen. I mean, it's happening. So we don't
right.
But so I guess we'll find out. But to me, I don't think being administered Ibogaine on like a stretcher in like a clinic somewhere, like a hospital, sounds very appealing to me. It's the preservation of the mentality behind them and the respect you should probably be giving them. I mean, if you've ever experienced these things, you really start to become more aware of the things that you just can't talk about. The end, like you can't talk about them in terms of Western medical ideology or really any ideology at all. I mean, it's something beyond a lot of those things, and it's just so epic that I don't know. It's hard.
What was the traditional use of Iboga in the Bwiti? I know they used it for initiation rites for adolescents into adulthood, and how else would they use the plant?
You can really use it for a lot of different ways. The way they microdose with it over there is for the most part how they use it. So for doing heavy work, like physically demanding work, or for hunting, they would microdose with it. But you can also, I kind of use microdosing for those things, but also kind of for like a meditation of sorts. You can really use microdosing with Iboga in really productive and practical ways. Sometimes even more so than a flood dose. I mean, I've already had the flood dose, and I think it is different. Once you flood dose, the microdosing is kind of a prolongation of that, of your relationship with the plant. But you can, the way that you can still walk around and function and everything, but what it does with your mindset is really like readily available, readily digestible. You remember everything. It's directly applicable to the way that you normally function. And then, of course, with initiations in Gabon, that's to see your Bwiti. You're meeting your ancestors, all of who come before you, all the knowledge they have, and how it relates to you and how it relates to the village. This is the main the message that you're trying to access during your initiation that will basically bring you will turn you into a man. So you bring back valuable knowledge from the ancestors.
Interesting. Yeah, that's what I assumed it was for. It just makes me think about, going back to like the integration, but then also with like, I guess like maybe medicalizing it and treating disorders, like where does some of that stuff where are the roots of that? Is it societal and environmental? Like, can plant medicine like heal these depressions, but then you're going back into a mad society that just doesn't really work with your worldview after a while. So I always kind of go back and forth between, like, they're great medicines, but then it's also like, I think at some point we need some sort of societal change as well.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's really tough, man, because, you look at any culture long enough, it's going to look crazy. You know,
right? Yeah, that's
really
true.
Crappy things happening anywhere, but just making it make more sense to humans. I guess we could apply science to like what makes sense for humans, right? I don't know, David. What do you think?
I don't know. I'm not sure the question.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. We're kind of like talking about getting reintroduced to a potentially ill culture. Or is it that all culture is ill? You know, like, is culture itself the thing that's negative? You know,
I can't live by thinking that it's ill or negative. I think, you know, it's kind of the only reality we have. So, if anything, maybe we're talking about acceptance with what's going on, even though there's a lot of injustice and all these oppressive things happening. You know, that's obviously not good for a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people are living with a lot less, and they don't have as much privilege as a lot of us, and a lot of people are living in poverty or in pain and stuff like that. So, you know, how can we accept all that? It's really not palatable to accept it for a lot of people. So, and if you do accept it, you can oftentimes be chastised by other people for not caring or giving a fuck about anything. You're just being selfish.
Right.
So, it's really like a vexy situation, and I think, to accept what's going on is really vexing. I mean, it's really hard, and I think the only thing we can do is changing what's immediately around us. You know, with the people that we live with, the way that we interact and react and act with everything. I think that's really as much as we can do. I think anything beyond that is a sort of vanity. And I also believe that anything beyond that not only is vanity, but you're going to end up probably adding more to the madness of that by trying to change it, you know, because for all we know, it doesn't need to be changed. I mean, maybe not in a humanist way, but like, I guess in a more like nihilistic, like huge, broad life kind of way, we're probably doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing. I mean, we don't really know. I guess we'll find out, but it's tricky.
Super hard. I don't disagree. It's almost like just figuring out how to live in right relationship, and it's a very personal thing for everybody. Getting really prescriptive on like the cultural level is super tough. You know, we could see what we think is injustice, but how do we really know? I personally like that whole space of not knowing. It's kind of a hard space to be in, but
yeah,
where you're gonna go?
That's a stance that I usually take. I don't really feel like I know too much sometimes, but I do. But yeah, I like that idea of just doing what you can around you. I think that has huge implications. You know, you kind of take care of your little microcosm, can sometimes have bigger effects on the macro. And just coming back and being in relationship on, you know, the people that you live with and your friends and your family, and just, you know, that small little world. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think it's really hard for us to just leave it alone. I mean, leave anything alone. You know, like the other day, the other night I was like looking up at the stars with somebody, and we were talking about the constellations and like how I used to look at the maps of the constellations of the stars, and how there's like lines drawn in between each star trying to make these shapes. I'm sitting there like kind of laughing at it, thinking like, geez, is there anything that we can't like leave alone? You know, just like look at it. But that's maybe a bad example because the constellations are kind of cool, but yeah, it's like I don't know.
Being content with what is.
Yeah, it's hard to do. There's always something more, I think, that we want to get, or that there's something. It's like we're always fighting with something.
Right. I'm kind of curious if you have an opinion or any thoughts, since you work with Iboga and people with addiction. Do you have any thoughts about this, so-called like heroin epidemic or opiate epidemic that's been going on?
It's really sad.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the people we get down here, most of them have really had enough of their life being tied to opiates. But the main thing that comes up a lot with people on the phone before they come here is, well, not a lot, but a lot of them talk about their doctors overprescribing these things. Which is really unnerving, because everyone believes doctors. So if you have your doctor saying that this is what you need, I've even talked with people where their doctors are mad at them for wanting to come off of these.
Yeah.
Really?
So, yeah. And, Suboxone being prescribed for depression. I even had a call with somebody saying that.
I didn't know that.
I don't think that's too common, but I have heard that.
Wow.
I've gotten calls from really irate moms saying that this is like a huge scandal, that their doctor kind of like made their son go on Suboxone and now he can't get off of it.
It's crazy. I had a friend that was like overprescribed, and somebody called and was like, why are you overprescribing them? And supposedly this is the doctor's words, like, well, it seems like the younger generation has like a low pain tolerance. Like, I figured I'd give them a little extra. It's like,
right. Yeah. Wow.
They're dealing with a special worldview as well. It's not just us that seems like we have a funny worldview. They certainly have their issues as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's scary, man. I had no clue.
Yeah, and now there's fentanyl, which is this super high-powered medical opiate that is being cut with the heroin on the street now a lot. And I think from what I've read in the news, it's responsible for a lot of deaths in the last few months, because it's so powerful that it's dosed in micrograms. So if you don't have the proper equipment to basically ration the fentanyl into the dope that you're selling, you're giving people lethal doses. You can't just use like a scale that we have access to, or you can't just eye it.
Right.
It's so powerful that you need like microscopes or something like that. I don't even know what you need, but
yeah, I think it's like 1,000 times stronger than morphine, right?
Yeah,
something like that.
Something crazy.
And now there's something out too that's even stronger than fentanyl, I believe, in the market. Like there were two deaths recently in New Hampshire related to it, or at least overdoses. I saw that this morning.
Yeah, so this is, I can sit here and say probably, that it makes sense as a money-making thing. Like the idea that Big Pharma has found the perfect way to get opiate users into their pockets is not too far from the truth, I don't think. Because if you have somebody on heroin, you can easily have a customer for life where they're constantly needing it every day. So the commodification of these opiates in the form of a legitimate medical pharmaceutical prescribed by doctors is going on, I think. There's still a lot of like street heroin users, and I guess there always will be, but I think the amount of people prescribed opiates has really gone up over the last few years.
Yeah, I think in New Jersey, it's actually really tough. I think doctors won't prescribe it because, there's like DA's watching or something like that. But I've had people like in significant pain try to get them, and the doctors, I think in New Jersey at least, are pretty scared to prescribe them.
Yeah.
I had a friend with dog bites the other day that it wasn't prescribed any pain meds whatsoever, even though she was in tons of pain. It's kind of crazy.
Oh.
Well, that's reassuring. But it kind of is. I mean, but I think that they have cracked down on like OxyContin.
Yeah.
They've really cracked down on the oxys. But it seems like instead that they're overprescribing Suboxone now.
Oh, interesting.
Which is really difficult to get off of. I mean, just in order to get Ibogaine treatment here, we require them to switch over back to a short-acting opiate before giving them any Ibogaine. And that's really hard for. It's basically impossible for people to do that because no doctor is going from a Suboxone prescription to an oxy prescription. So they're kind of just like most of these people don't come here because they just can't.
Wow.
They can't. The idea being that the 30 days of switching over is going to maintain them from going into any withdrawal and also giving them the time to have the Suboxone get out of their system is the main point, but they really can't get access to legal pharmaceutical short-actings.
Interesting. So we're coming kind of close to the end here. Just really curious about your thoughts on spreading this similar model you have going on, because we have people, more people that need treatment than treatment centers available, especially following your model, which is not in a hospital bed. Do you see more grassroots people getting started, or what are you seeing in this world?
I'm seeing that it will probably go clinical. Like, I think there will still be people that will want what we're doing, and they'll want it more as a retreat and more of a spiritual retreat, while also having, medical precautions going on and medical supervision going on. But I think, ultimately, the way that Ibogaine has been going has been a push for it to be a clinical treatment used by doctors for opiate addicts. So that's just the trend I see in most of the clinics, and especially the big successful ones are really boasting their medical supervision, their medical expertise, the safety, $100,000 medical equipment, stuff like that, to ensure your safety. I mean, it makes sense because a lot of people that call here are moms or dads, and they want to know that their kid is going to be safe. So they're gonna pay the extra money, which isn't that much more, considering that you're already probably going to put up like $4,000 minimum anyway. They'll pay the extra like $3,000 to have it done in a medical professional space. And it's been working out for a lot of people, I think, in those situations. A lot of people are getting helped by that. And it goes back to the being legitimized within the medical framework, the Western medical framework, as a really legitimate, effective addiction treatment. That's kind of where Ibogaine's been going, I think. Even with people who have done ayahuasca, I always ask them if they've heard of Iboga, and they usually say no. And the ones that have heard of it, they're either scared of it because of the association with drug use and heroin users, or the significant price increase in an Iboga treatment versus like an ayahuasca retreat is like sometimes like 5 times as much, more sometimes 10 times as much. So I like to believe that there's still going to be room for people wanting this to be done in the way that we're doing it, maybe in the way that Iboga Wellness isn't doing it. I know other people are doing it ceremonially too. and more of a grassroots kind of like mom and pop operation. And I hope that they stay alive, because I think a lot of people do want that experience of being reconnected with nature and experiencing somewhat of an indigenous culture and that mentality behind it. This is a plant medicine and everything.
Right.
So, but yeah, I think it's really going to become legitimized as a because it's that effective. I think it's really effective with opiate dependent people. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. It works for withdrawal and for really having the possibility of them looking at themselves.
Hi, everybody. Sorry for that little cutout. We're actually going to wrap because we're a little over time, but it was super fun talking to David from Oka, and I think we got some really great stuff for us to consider and hopefully for you guys to consider too. And David's going to give you a little bit of info about Oka so you guys can reach out and decide if you're interested in going or not. Yeah, so off to you.
Sure. So you can reach us at our email at okacenter@gmail.com. If you're considering coming down, just either start it with an email, or you can call at 707-787-3025. But it's usually best to have a phone conversation, just so we get to know each other and stuff, because there's so many other clinics, and it's better to just talk on the phone, because just going by people's websites or anything else, I mean, it's still even hard with a phone conversation, because you're really looking for someone to trust and to feel okay about going to. So call us or email, but even if you do email, I guess we'll end up calling anyway. And people coming to Iboga or ayahuasca, I think it's really something that's a phenomenon in and of itself, the way people come to these things. So I hope that we can just maybe help facilitate whoever wants to come to come, to feel safe here and to feel welcome here. And I guess that's it.
Cool. Well, really appreciate it. And yeah, if people are interested in Ibogaine work, I really promote the idea of, not necessarily just going and doing it in a hospital bed. Look around. There are different ways of getting involved with this particular kind of medicine, and some kinds are better for other, particular kinds of people. So I think this is a really cool model. It seems very safe to me, especially with the EEGs and having a nurse there. So.
Yeah. Well, another thing I will add to that is that feeling secure and safe is a really important part of this whole thing. People should be feeling that the most. You're about to go into a big unknown. Huge. So for some people, it could be better to it might be a big source of security to be next to a doctor in a hospital or something like that. That's just I guess personal preference, you would say. And if that's going to make people feel a lot safer, then they should do that, obviously. But of course, I believe what we're doing is very safe, and we have all the safety precautions taken into consideration, and we have like you said, the pre-screening and the medical supervision too. So, I just wanted to add that in there.
Cool. I appreciate that. I couldn't agree more. And I'm glad you guys take it that way. Thanks again for tuning in to Psychedelics today. We really appreciate you checking us out. Hope that interview with Dave Stetson from Oka Retreat Center, Oka Ibogaine Retreat Center in Mexico is good. Let us know what you think. We have a contact form on the site, or you can email us at psychedelicstoday@gmail.com. If you want to enter for our ultimate psychedelic book giveaway. There's still a link on our website and on our Facebook and probably Twitter and Instagram as well. So check that out. We got 9 books and a DVD, plus a seat to our psychedelic self-care and integration course in July. Sales for the kind of supported version, live supported version of the psychedelic self-care and integration class. It should go live in just a few days here. And, feel free to check our site out or ask us about it. You can also buy a online version of the class where we don't really do some live webinars to support you, but we do have a live Facebook group, secret Facebook group to offer support. And it's kind of a community effort there, and it's pretty cool. So, if you have questions, there's actually therapists, real live licensed therapists, I think some PhDs in the field that can offer their advice as well. The good news is a lot of therapists actually think we covered almost everything we need to cover in there. And Kyle and I plan to continually improve it. So once you buy it, I think you get lifetime, or you will get lifetime access. And you can just continue your integration journey there. Hopefully also with some real live people in real life. But this should give you the help you need to get that ball rolling. And don't underestimate the importance of education in this field. It really could save people's lives and keep them out of the hospital or out of jail. So get educated as much as you can and keep your friends and you safe. All right, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care. Bye-bye.